Captain Marcus Rivera felt the first bead of sweat form on his brow as the atmospheric control system's warning lights bathed the bridge in crimson. The Endeavour's climate regulation had been acting up for the past 3 days, but now it had finally given up entirely. The temperature readings on his console showed a steady climb, 28 degrees Celsius and rising. "Engineering report," Marcus called out, loosening his collar as the heat began to build. Lieutenant Thompson's voice crackled through the comm system. "Captain, the primary cooling matrix is completely fried. Secondary systems are overloaded. We're looking at complete atmospheric failure within 6 hours if we can't get the heat exchangers back online." The timing couldn't have been worse. They were currently hosting a diplomatic delegation from Kepler 442b, a species humanity had only recently made contact with. The Kalari were elegant beings, tall and willowy with translucent blue-tinted skin that seemed to shimmer in the ship's lighting. Their ambassador, Lyrian, had been conducting crucial trade negotiations that could determine humanity's expansion into their sector of the galaxy. As if summoned by his thoughts, Ambassador Lyrian glided onto the bridge, accompanied by her 2 senior advisors, Naya and Vera. Their environmental suits, which they typically wore as a courtesy to maintain diplomatic protocol, looked increasingly cumbersome as the temperature continued to rise. "Captain Rivera," Lyrian's melodic voice carried a note of concern, "our sensors indicate significant atmospheric distress aboard your vessel." Marcus nodded grimly. "I'm afraid our life support is experiencing critical failure. We're working on repairs, but the temperature will continue rising for several more hours." The ambient temperature had now reached 35 degrees Celsius. Marcus could see his human crew members beginning to shed their uniform jackets and roll up sleeves. The Kalari, however, seemed relatively unaffected by the heat, their natural physiology apparently more adaptable to temperature variations. "Captain," Chief Engineer Rodriguez emerged from the maintenance shaft, her face flushed and uniform soaked with perspiration. "We need to shut down all non-essential systems to reduce internal heat generation. That includes artificial gravity in sections C through F." Marcus made the difficult decision. "Do it. All crew members, switch to emergency protocols. Minimal clothing, maximum cooling." What followed was an awkward but necessary transformation. The human crew began removing layers of clothing, stripping down to their basic undergarments to cope with the rising heat. The ship's corridors filled with crew members in various states of undress, all focused on their duties despite the uncomfortable circumstances. The Kalari delegation watched with what could only be described as fascination. Their large, opalescent eyes tracked the humans' adaptation with scientific curiosity. "Remarkable," Naya whispered to her companions in their native tongue, which the ship's translator picked up. "Their species actually removes their outer protective layers as a cooling mechanism." Vera nodded, equally intrigued. "And observe how their skin changes color, that reddening appears to be increased blood flow for heat dissipation." Ambassador Lyrian approached Marcus, who was now working in just his undershirt and uniform pants, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity while sweat dripped from his forehead. "Captain, we are impressed by your species' adaptability," she said, her translator rendering her tone as admiring. "On our world, we simply alter our internal chemistry to regulate temperature. This external adaptation is quite ingenious." 8 hours later, when the engineering team finally restored the cooling systems, the crisis had unexpectedly strengthened the diplomatic bonds between the species. The Kalari had gained new respect for human resilience and ingenuity, while the humans had learned that their alien guests were far more understanding and curious than judgmental. As the crew gradually returned to proper uniform, Marcus reflected on how sometimes the most embarrassing situations could lead to the most genuine connections. The trade negotiations concluded successfully the following day, with the Kalari praising human adaptability as a valuable trait for interstellar cooperation. The Endeavour continued its mission with improved relations, better cooling systems, and a crew that had learned never to take life support for granted again.